What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this Honda lawnmower, and the problem is that this mower has a self-propel problem and it also doesn't want to roll backwards either. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this mower. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. So this Honda mower came to us with several problems, one of which was lower than normal compression and a recoil that wasn't working. In an effort to fix the compression issue, we checked the valve lash to see if it was causing our problems, but unfortunately, it was actually spot on. The conclusion then was that the lack of maintenance was the main problem, so we're going to have to live with it. So here's the main problem with this mower, it's the self-propel system. The problem is it doesn't work, and also when you pull the mower backwards, the wheels don't actually roll, they actually lock up. Now I have worked on a mower with this problem before, but this one is going to be a little bit different. The first thing we need to do is make sure all the fluids are out of this engine. That's because we need to turn this mower upside down so we can inspect the transmission and drive axles for any problems. If there's any gas and oil in the engine and we turn it upside down, you could end up with a huge mess, so it's just easier to drain them. Next, I want to remove the blades to get them out of the way, and also because I want to sharpen them. If yours doesn't need sharpening, you could just rotate them out of the way. After the blades are gone, I'll then remove the shield that covers the drive belt. Once the shield is gone, we can then inspect the belt and the belt tensioner spring. If I squeeze the belt, you can see there's plenty of tension on it. Also, this spring is what applies the tension on the belt, and there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it as well. Now, if I rotate the engine, you can see the belt turning the pulley on the transmission, so no problems so far. Now, the wheels aren't turning because we don't have the self-propel handle in the right position, but if we move the handle to activate the self-propel, you can see that it pulls the lever on the side of the transmission, and that's what engages it. Something also worth noting, the transmission is covered in dirt and oil, so I'm not sure if it's leaking, but I can't check it because it's a sealed system. Now if I rotate the wheels like it's moving forward, you can hear the clicks from the ratcheting system. It's basically freewheeling. To test that the self-propel system is working, I'll move the handle into position and then try rotating the wheels, but as you can see it's locked to the engine because it's not running. Now if I deactivate the self-propel system, you can see that I can turn the wheels like it's rolling backwards and the transmission is turning. However, it's extremely difficult. There's something causing a lot of drag on the driveline. I also noticed that the cable adjustment for the self-propel cable is too far back, so I need to readjust it to apply more force to the engagement arm in the transmission. This would definitely cause the self-propel not to work properly as well. The other problem is that the gear selector lever is stuck and I can't change the gear. This could cause the self-propel system not to work if it was stuck between gears. It also looks like the cable is split in a few places, so we're going to need to replace it. Unfortunately, to do that, we need to remove the transmission, which we were going to do anyway. To start, remove the wheels and the drive gears. You're going to need a snap ring plier for this part. The only bit of advice I have is when removing all the pieces off the axle, I would use a long magnet and line up all the pieces you remove in order. That way you can put them back on in the correct order. So this is where our problems could start. The axle rotates on the height selector arm, and sometimes these two pieces can rust together. If you move the arm, you can see it moving independently from the axle, which it's supposed to do. I'll spray some lubricant on the axle to help loosen it so we can remove it later on. This would have been a likely place for a lot of drag to happen. There is some drag, but it's not enough to cause our problems. While I'm here, I'll clean the key slot where the spring would sit as well. After that's done, we need to do the same thing to the other side of the mower. I'll speed this part of the video up since you've already seen the process. Just be careful and don't lose any parts, especially the key or the spring and the axle. So this is the problem I was talking about. As you can see, if I rotate the height adjuster arm around, it's also turning the axle as well. These should spin independently from one another. This is more than likely the source of the drag we witnessed when I was turning the wheel as if I was rolling the mower backwards. The first thing we need to do is free the arm from the axle, then we can try removing both adjusters from the deck so we can remove the transmission. Unfortunately, just using spray lubricant isn't going to free up the axle, so I'll clean some of the grease off the middle of the axle so I can put a locking plier on it, then I'll try freeing it up again. I'm not sure what causes this sort of rusting problem in this location, but if I had to guess, I'd say it was a combination of not cleaning the deck from mowing wet grass and then leaving the mower in storage for a very long time. probably outside. Now I know this mower deck looks pretty clean of any debris, but that's because I cleaned it before filming, and I'll tell you it was pretty bad. It's a good practice to do this at least once a year, if not more. Next, we need to remove the tensioner spring, and the only way I know how to do this is using some locking pliers. If you have a better way, I'd like to know about it. Now the height adjuster arms are held in place with another clip and washer, so you'll need your snap ring pliers again. I wasn't able to find the 90-degree tips for this application, but you can still manage with the straight ones. It just takes a little bit more time and effort. After removing the adjusters from the deck, I'll then move to the other side so I can take them out as well, and luckily there's a little bit more room on this side to use the pliers. Even after freeing the lever from the axle, it was still tough to remove it. That's just how bad the rust was. Now once the axle is free, I'll use some sandpaper to remove the rust from the axles, but before we do that, we need to remove the belt from the transmission pulley. However, we can't remove the transmission just yet as there's not enough room to maneuver it out of the deck, so we need to remove the sheet metal from the chute. The last piece of metal is in our way. Now, you could leave it there, but you'll need to bend it a bit. Instead, I'll remove the bolt at the bottom, and that should give us enough room to pull the transmission out. Now, with the transmission free from the deck, I want to test it out and see if there's any problems with it. As you can see, the transmission works fine and I don't feel any problems with it, so it's still good. And that's a great thing as these are hard to find, and if you do find them, they are way too expensive to make a repair worth it. Next, I want to remove the screw and washer holding the gear selector cable to the transmission. Then there's one more screw that holds the end of the cable that needs to be removed as well. It just happens to be covered in dirt and oil, so it's really hard to see. Once that's free, we can then swing the cable away from the transmission and disconnect it. And lastly, we can then release the self-propel cable from its anchor and then disconnect it from its lever. Now that all the cables are free, I want to test the transmission again, but this time I'll try changing gears to make sure they still work. If the speeds change like they're supposed to, then I'll clean the transmission of the dirt and oil that's covering it. I'll also clean the rust off the axles so we can start putting it back into the mower. So here it is after a good soapy scrubbing, and as you can see, it looks almost brand new. The axles look shiny and new as well, so we shouldn't have any drag issues with the adjuster arms anymore. The only problem is that this gear selector arm is kind of tough to move, so I think I'll remove this plate and see how it works against the arm. So it looks like this piece is spring loaded and sets the arm into 3 different positions for the gears. I think if I spray some lithium grease in there and on the notches, it should make it a lot easier to move. It seems to work a lot better now, so that means it's now time to remove the old gear selector cable and replace it with the new one. These can still be bought online for less than $20, so it wasn't cheap, but that's because it came with a new plastic housing for the gear lever on the handle, so I think it was a good deal. Just unravel it and feed the cable through the deck and attach the end to the transmission. Another reason why the self-propel might not be working and why it wouldn't roll backwards would be the transmission might be locked up because it's lost all its fluid. The fix would be to replace the transmission, but like I said earlier, these can be hard to find and very expensive. As long as the engine starts and it still mows, I'd probably just use it as a push mower at that point. So this is where I make a mistake, and I want to point it out so you don't make it either. Before putting the transmission back onto the deck, you need to slide the washer and snap ring back onto the axle, but you need to first slide on the snap ring followed by the washer, and as you can see, I have them backwards, which I realized later on and had to remove everything to swap them around, so make sure you put the snap ring on first, followed by the washer. After getting the transmission back into the mower, I'll then replace all the sheet metal for the chute. I also sprayed the bolts down with lubricant, that way they won't rust in place next time for whoever might have to take this apart, but to be honest, it's probably going to be me. I don't expect this transmission to last forever as it's made out of plastic and not metal like a commercial one would be. Now this probably would have been a great time to replace the belt, but it was actually in great shape, so someone must have replaced it at some point in its life. Also, when installing the adjuster arms, I'm going to spray a lot of lithium grease in and on it, so hopefully they won't rust to the axle in the future. So this is when I noticed the mistake I had made. I'll just fix the problem off screen and then continue with the repair. There were a lot of steps and pieces that were taken off, so a mistake was bound to happen at some point. Fortunately, I didn't make the same mistake on the other side, but it didn't matter as I had to remove everything again just to remove the transmission to fix this side. Once all the adjusters are back on, all we have to do is replace all the spacers, washers, and snap rings till the wheels are back on. I'm only going to show putting this side back together as the other side is the exact same way. It's finally time to replace the tensioner spring, its shield, the blade, which I did sharpen, and then we can finally put the mower back on its wheels for testing. Just remember to replace the oil before you try starting it. Since we took the valve cover off, we need to clean all the old sealer off of it and the engine and then reapply new sealer to it. Then we can replace the valve cover to the engine. I did let it tack up a bit before installing it. I then tightened the bolts by hand and then let it set for a few hours and then went back to tighten them again. This way the sealer doesn't squeeze out. I'm testing it out on concrete since there's no tread on the tires and the grass is a bit damp, but it's a lot better than before where it used to just lock up. The next thing we need to do is remove the old cable from the handlebar and replace it with the one from the kit. Although there wasn't anything wrong with the original gear selector lever, since the kit came with one, I might as well replace the whole thing. Now you could order just the cable by itself, but it was almost just as expensive as the kit. That's why I ordered the kit. Now this time I'm on the grass and it's still not locking up, so I think we fixed the problem. It's now time for a test start. Once we get it started, I'll be going through the gears and hopefully it works like it should. So it started on the first pull and it looks like every gear is working like it should, so it's pretty much ready for another mowing season. Now, I spent way too much time on this mower. The parts total didn't go past $40, but the time was well over 8 hours for the 3 videos I've done on this mower. At shop prices, that's pretty much a no-brainer to pass this on to someone else who has a lot of time on their hands. Now, I can't really fault anyone for the problems this mower had. Most mowers were never meant to last this long, so if it does, it's going to develop some strange problems. The goal for most of my residential mowers is 10 years, and that's it. After that, someone else can have it and deal with the problems it's going to have. So my question is, would you ever spend more than 8 hours working on a single mower? I'm talking about standing over or under the mower, hands-on contact with nuts, bolts, blades, and belts for 8 hours. If you said yes, is it because the mower is extremely valuable, like a commercial unit that could be worth about $1,000? Now, I originally passed on fixing this mower basically because it wouldn't be worth it, but out of sheer curiosity, I made an effort and came out on top, but it could have easily turned out much worse. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.